Today we're going to look at Encyclia and their cultural requirements, along with the different potting media and methods you can use to suit your climate. And welcome to the Nature Company. If this is the kind of information you're interested in, please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and that notification bell to be notified of all our upcoming videos so you don't miss out on a thing. So here's me pulling my hair out. Due to technical difficulties, not user error, technical difficulties, I'm going to have to re-show you these. So it's one of these long air pots to allow for all that air movement into the media so it can dry out quickly. I was using this 19mm stone, packing that into the bottom, approximately 1/3 of the pot. That's going to give it the stability that it needs. It's going to give it the weight at the bottom, so that as this grows and as those huge big long flower spikes come, it gives it a solid base to grow on, so it's not going to be blown over by the wind or anything like that. Also allow for that extra fast drainage at the bottom. Not too much water being held by the bark, and the bark that I used is a fine grade orchid bark. The reason I'm using the fine grade for this as opposed to the medium is because of all these air gaps and that super fast evaporation that's going to take place from the media. It's also going to allow for less frequent watering, which suits my watering habits. If you're watering more frequently, you can use larger bark in a pot like this, but I find the fine orchid bark works extremely well. This is our intergeneric hybrid, the Prosthecia cross Encyclia. It's called Prosthecia tamlia. Gets those beautiful greeny white petals and sepals with that amazing soft pink lip. It really is a fast grower, and when in flower it's extremely attractive. That's why I wanted to put it in this beautiful hanging basket. It's a good looking plant all year round, so this is going to go somewhere where it can be displayed beautifully. Also, the reason for a hanging basket for Encyclias is because of the fact that they don't like to be kept moist all the time. They like to be watered and then dried and then watered again. Let's again take out all the media that we had so carefully potted in here. Technical error. So what we've done here is we've put some of this medium size. This is the medium size now, not the small. The medium size orchid bark at the base. Then I'd mixed about 1/3 charcoal in with the medium orchid bark. Put that on top, placing our orchid into that, and then just using that straightforward medium size orchid bark chunks on top. There we go. All that charcoal is going to allow for that aeration at the root level. The bark on top is going to help just keep some of that extra humidity level in and around the roots available to the plant. And being in a hanging basket, we're going to get evaporation from all the sides as well as the top, so that's going to allow for this media to dry out very quickly, but still keeping enough moisture for the orchid to grow really well. This is Encyclia Orchid, also in one of these air pots, but this media is well past its sell-by date, so we'll just give that a squeeze to get it out. Can notice here again, because it's a bigger size pot than the previous one, we used that 19mm stone and some charcoal in between to give that good aeration of the media and that fast draining. And because I want to show you different multiple techniques, I'm just going to be dividing this section off here. Again, we see how short those rhizomes are basically pushing each pseudobulb right next to the other one. That's one of the reasons that it likes that good drain media, because with the lack of air movement through this, it will easily cause that rot to set in. So, and you can see how nice the roots have been set, because they were all set. They'd all grown themselves all around the outside edge of this pot, which is ideal. So that gets that air movement into them and allows them to dry out. Yeah, we see we have desiccated this a little bit too far. We were keeping this out of our spring rain, and obviously I'd put it in a position that I'd forgotten to water it. So we've got a little bit dehydrated, but that's going to be easy to sort out. But we can still see how strong those roots are, even with that dehydration that's taking place. So, and another thing that they like to be is to be mounted, because that's how they would grow naturally on those oak forests, all the way from as high as Florida all the way down to Argentina. The different varieties, they grow in those deciduous forests and things like that, where they see a lot of light. They can even take some full light if you acclimatize them to it, but I wouldn't give them full sun all day. Either just a good shot in the morning or some in the afternoon. You can tell as soon as you get this red coloration, this red pigmentation to it. This is an automated response to a lot of light. It's basically the plant giving itself some sunblock. In Encyclias, it makes you know that you're giving them enough light, and that's generally when you get the best flowering out of them. If you give them too little light, you'll notice they'll go that deep dark emerald green color, and then you probably won't get any flowers out of them at all. So you want to keep them a nice medium green to a yellow green, and preferably with a bit of that redness to it. So very much like a cattleya in its response to the light. Now we're just going to be mounting this. We're going to be taking some of our wire and going around and round and round, just to hold it nicely in position, and it will root itself on. Those roots are going to attach itself to this wood really quickly, because they're all good, strong, viable roots already. This log I've left soaking, so it's nice and wet, so the orchid's going to appreciate that little bit of moisture pre-supplied, and then will also help with follow-up waterings to ensure that we don't allow it to desiccate completely. The nice thing about these is, because the bulbs are so tightly together, we can just string our wire through it and it holds it really well. There we go, just winding it around like that. We're hoping it doesn't break in our hands. Technical difficulties day today. There we go. What we can also do if we want to is get a little bit of fishing gut, just to wrap those around a little bit more tightly. But that is going to make a magnificent display. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove all this back bulb volume here, because these are all joined in the new growth, and this will allow me to propagate from these old back pseudobulbs, which these Encyclias do really well. Just get it in between and give that a snip. I'm going to be repotting it back into the same pot again, setting it up in the middle. We saw how well that had grown out and filled up the entire pot. We're going to go with the medium-sized orchid bark and that 19mm stone. I'm going to be pretty much doing a 50-50 mix of this. The reason for a 50-50 mix is because we have such a big space in between that we need to get that evaporation to take place in the center. Even though we saw how beautiful the roots had moved away around through the outside, looking for all that air and dryness that they want. That's going to reset itself up upright. I'll get all little budlets coming out from around the bases, so that will fill up in and around itself quite well. And what if I want one of these beauties in a nice little pot? This color is going to suit the color of the flower so beautifully, and put it on my windowsill. but all I've got is plastic pots. Well, that's not going to be a problem either. If we're wanting to be keeping this inside, remember we've got to keep high humidities because Encyclias prefer from 50 to 80% humidity levels. The closer to the 50% mark you get, the more often you're going to have to mist. And here, if we're going to be doing an indoor orchid, what I'm going to do is basically just use our lacquer and our perlite. There we go, it's still got all that airspace, but that perlite is then going to hold the moisture without keeping the media damp. And then we'll just use our lacquer around the top of it. And there we go. You notice I did use a lot of perlite in the mix below, because I don't have any other water retentive media in here. It's just to make sure that it keeps enough water long enough for the orchid to be able to absorb. So this is Encyclia Randia variation rondondiensis. We've got a nice silver fern growing in between it that likes the same sort of climate as what our Encyclias do. So we'll just give this pot a squeeze to pull it out. And again, removing it, you'll see all the stone coming out from the bottom of the pot. So you'll notice all of these methods use very differing media, and it's all just to give you an idea of the different types of media you can use to grow your Encyclias to suit your environment and to your watering techniques. Also with these, I can keep them within these different medias because I've put them in different areas around my home that suit the watering needs that I have for where they are. Encyclias are adapted to environments that get big seasonal changes in rainfall. That's why they're so drought hardy. Is generally they get high rainfall in the summer seasons and then very low rainfall in the winter seasons, if any at all. So they produce these large fat pseudobulbs so that they can store enough water. Also, you'll notice their leaves are thick and fleshy, if not quite stiff and hard. This helps them retain all that moisture that they need for those drought seasons. And your Encyclias are going to be more drought hardy than they are going to be rain hardy. So don't overwater them. Depending on the media that you've got them in and where you're putting them, some of them may never be needed to be watered if they're getting high rainfall during summer and none in the winter. There are intermediate orchids, meaning they prefer medium temperatures with generally sort of a fairly high degree of variability from the evening to days. And that's what helps force the flowering. Often they'll go dormant during that winter phase where there's lack of water, and so that's the point where you should withhold water completely, unless of course you start seeing a little bit of dehydration of the pseudobulbs, and you can give them a drop or two, but generally you can leave them and wait for the onset of spring before you start watering. Feeding, I generally feed mine fairly heavily during the growing season, every week with an organic fertilizer. So here again, I don't have any more of that 9mm, so I'll be using this 19mm stone again. But because it's got such big air gaps, I'm just going to be using very small quantities of this bark to put in between. This is the fine orchid bark that I'm just going to be mixing in just in between, just to hold a little bit of moisture. Okay, there we go. You'll see how little bark has actually been mixed in there. And then again, a nice color pot to match the color of the flowers, just to make that pink really pop. This, because we've got such long roots, we're going to set those roots down into the bottom of the pot already to start with, and then just fill in with that mix. And there again, because I've used so much stone, I'm just going to be taking a little bit of bark and using that as a top dressing. So one of Encyclia's biggest enemies is water and overwatering. We had a particularly wet spring and no real warmth to dry it up. So we've managed to catch a little bit of what is just the beginning of a fungal attack. So our trusty garlic tonic, we're going to give these a good dose. This is all part of what I had explained during the technical difficulties. So we'll just show again. We'll use our garlic tonic once a week for 4 weeks to sort out this early stage fungal problem on these two. And we'll just give the others a quick spray too. And if this hasn't done the trick, then we'll take to more drastic measures, but invariably when caught at this stage, the garlic does a wonderful job of stopping that fungal infection from spreading any further or doing any further damage. So with these different techniques and methods of potting and looking after your Encyclias, there's no excuse why you shouldn't be able to keep them successfully in your environment. They really are easy to maintain, and let's face it, are one of the most spectacular. Most of them are scented, so you get that amazing flower with a beautiful scent, and who can resist that? I'm sorry this video was a bit disjointed, but it was not error 101, it was error 403, technical difficulties, not user incapabilities. But anyway, thank you for watching, and if you found this information helpful, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button down below, and that notification bell, bing bong, to be notified of all our upcoming content so you don't miss out.